especially a group like 7, than I was able to do on my own. And part of that is this desire, increasing desire, that I want my work to make a difference. I want my work to have some meaning. I love photography, and on sort of like a craftsmanship, artistic level. I can make still pictures for the rest of my life and just enjoy that, the process of it, the craftsmanship of it. But ultimately, I am a political animal, and I'm an engaged being, and when I feel most alive when I'm involved in a subject or an issue that I feel has importance. And so I'm very attracted to advocacy journalism. And the work that I've done, that we're doing with Think Outside the Cell, is absolutely connected to that. It's a perfect, it almost epitomizes this kind of work, where you're creating media materials. We're using my ability to tell stories so that an organization can use that material to advocate for change or to raise awareness.
Yeah, so I'm noticed it says you're a leading pioneer of this multimedia type of storytelling. Can you tell us a little bit more about that, how you use stills along with video to tell your stories?
Yeah, well, it was in 2000 that I decided, actually it was in the midst of the project on aging, where I had this sort of epiphany, which seems very naive now and simplistic, but then it seemed earth-shattering, that why don't we start shooting video? So along with our stills, we'll be able to bring our subjects to life. We'll be able to capture their voices, and not just their words, but their voices, and the animation, and the animated characters. So that's where it began for me. I mean, obviously, people have been putting still pictures and music and sound and voices together for decades. But in the world of photojournalism, this was a new idea, and I think it was also new. What made it also feel new is that it was connected to this sort of tremendous, growth of or the impact of the digital revolution. But for me, the key element has been maintaining the use of still imagery within the visual narrative. I love shooting video, but I love being a still photographer, and I love the impact. I appreciate the impact and respect the impact, the very unique quality of still imagery.
In 2003, Ed Kashi and his wife, writer and documentary filmmaker Julie Winoka, released the film Aging in America, The Years Ahead, capturing stories of people across the country, including those of the elderly incarcerated.
When I worked on the Aging Project, the very first story we did was about aging prisoners in America, and how I went to prison in Texas and in Alabama, where they had dedicated geriatric wards or wings. And, at that point, I don't know the statistics today, but I believe they're probably more or less the same. The fastest growing segment of our prison population are our elderly prisoners, because as we have tougher sentencing laws, 3 strikes and you're out, and, much harder to get parole, they're basically in there for life. And so what do we do with all these folks who are growing old in prison? Besides the fact that it costs us 3 times as much money, just on a taxpayer level, it costs us 3 times as much money to care for an elderly prisoner as a young, healthy prisoner. But then on a moral level, to me, it's troubling. So, what does it take to decide as a society that we want to change these things, or just let them continue to, in my eyes, spiral out of control? That's why I feel so empowered when I get to work on stories like this or projects like this, where hopefully, Sheila and her organization can take this work and advocate for change and raising awareness. And, I really do believe if you could change, 1 or 2 people's minds, especially people who are in policy-making decisions or legislative positions, then you really can make a difference. We made a conscious editorial decision not to say why Ronald and Mercedes, like what they did, because we, at least whether it's right or wrong, we made the decision was made. That's not what's important, for what we're trying to accomplish.
It sounds like what you're asking us to do is look at who this person is now, today.
Yes, and also to give them another chance. Otherwise, Why even waste any taxpayer money? Either we're going to be a society that learns to care for one another and give each other another chance, especially if it's folks who are sincerely trying, right? Or why even pretend?
Yeah.
You know, why even pretend?
Thank you to MIPJ contributor Katina Andaniadis for some great interviews, and thanks also to Charlotte Nisser of KWVA 88.1 for their generous technical support. You can find links to the Think Outside the Cell Foundation website as well as Seven Photo Agency at www.mipj.org. In future shows, MIPJ will be looking at the subject of incarceration from a variety of angles. The so-called war on drugs and the effect that has had on our society, efforts to change the way we punish people for certain crimes, and the effectiveness of those efforts. A more in-depth look at something Ed Kashi mentioned, the aging of the incarcerated, and much more. If this is a topic you feel you have expertise on and would like to contribute to any MIPJ online radio show, please contact me through the website at www.mipj.org.
This is MIPJ Online Radio.
Music there from Incendio, and that track was called Emperor off their live album Dia y Noche. There is a link to Incendio's website at mipj.org. In the next broadcast, we'll be starting our ongoing series on the indigenous people of the world and traveling to the Kalahari Desert in southern Africa for a closer look at the oldest ethnic tribe on Earth, the Bushmen. I'll be speaking to renowned anthropologist Dr. Robert Hitchcock, international water management expert James Workman, and also learning more about the music of the Bushmen from Pops Muhammad and Clark Wheeler, two musicians from different sides of the globe who are doing what they can to introduce this amazing culture to us through their music. Here's an excerpt from my interview with Jamie Workman.
These Bushmen have been deprived. They're under siege. The government's deprived them of their water. It's cut off their boreholes, their wells, and sort of camping outside the reserve until they leave. And I think that's terrible. That's what we did in America that was so bad. And I'm going now as an international water management expert. I'm going to fill up some jerry cans of water and go rescue the Bushmen. And so I drove into the Kalahari in this, relatively new red Land Rover, and I was just feeling very self-righteous, very heroic. And I even, paused on my journey and jotted in my notebook saying something like, "This is the most important thing I've ever done." And a day and a half into the journey, the vehicle jiggered loose its air intake and started sucking in some dust, which clogged the carburetor and made the engine seize up. And I realized, at that point, how utterly stupid I was, not just in being unprepared and rushing in to rescue these guys, but thinking that they actually needed rescuing at all, that they'd been there for 30,000 years, and suddenly, they would need me to come to their aid. It's like the Eskimos, my gosh, they've lost electricity. How are they going to keep their food cold and stuff like that? They knew where the water was, and no, it wasn't as ample as a well, pumped for them, and it wasn't as convenient as having a truck come in and deposit that. But